So the message that I would like to leave you with today is this. Living a sustainable life doesn't suck. From the time our eyes can focus on a screen, we are inundated with images of a profoundly unsustainable culture. And we are told, this is cool, this is sexy, you want this. And most of us do want it. In contrast, the images that we have of what a sustainable life might look like tend to fall into two categories. The first is that this is something being pursued by flaky dreamers who are out of touch with reality. And the other one actually comes more from a place of fear, and that is that if we commit to living on fewer resources, what we're getting ourselves into is a life of poverty, deprivation, and limited choices. Now, when you add all of that together, what it means is that sustainable living has a serious PR problem. In short, we think it's going to suck. All right, so imagine this. Bring to mind your life, your work and play, your routines, the spaces that you occupy. Now, try to imagine your life lived on 10% of the resources that you are currently consuming. Try it. That number is important. I believe that if we are actually going to live sustainably, we're going to be doing it on something that is about 10% of the resources that the current average American consumes. So what does 10% look like in your mind? I mean, do you even believe that sustainable is possible? Well, I think that we need new images, because I'm guessing that what you just pictured is unlikely to inspire you to be willing to change your life. Yeah? Okay. So I want to talk for a moment about optimism, because I don't think that we're going to get to 10% without it. So I have taped up here on the stage a box, and I want you to imagine with me for a moment that what is inside this box is the state of the world exactly as it is. The wars, the poverty, the ecological crisis, all the acts of kindness, the wonders of the modern world, all of it's in this box. Now, pessimism is having both feet planted firmly in this box. So you look around and you say, this is the way the world is, this is all that's ever going to be. Now, some people call this being realistic. And of course, it's true, this is what is real right now. But there's not a lot of hope in this box, really. Now, if you come out here, this is what I call Pollyanna world. All right, so this is the everything is just fine perspective. And it is so tempting to live here because some of what's in that box is deeply painful for us to look at. But this actually doesn't give you much leverage for solving the world's problems either. So optimism is having one foot in the box. You're looking at the world unflinchingly, exactly as it is. And you have one foot out here in hope, in the possibility that we can create something better. So I live here. And more precisely, I live in a place called Dancing Rabbit Ecovillage in Rutledge, Missouri. And we are a sustainable living demonstration project and intentional community. And at Dancing Rabbit, we import optimists and we export hope. And that hope is because we are 75 people who are actually making the 10% mark in some of the most important ecological measurements that we have. And I would like to show you what a 10% life can look like. All right, so let's start with utilities. By operating on a community scale, we've been able to start our own solar-based power company. And we have a commitment that for every kilowatt hour we bring in off of the regular grid, we will export 2 kilowatt hours of our green power back out again. And we only use about 7.5% of the American average of electricity, mostly through conservation and smart design of our buildings. We use 8% of the average of propane and 9% of the water. And half of that water comes from rain catchment off of our roofs. Now, I want to give you a sense of some of the lifestyle choices that we're making around water that make those numbers look so good. So the first one is that we use composting toilets. All right, now instead of pooping in potable water, which is just a little goofy, like think about all the people in the world who still don't have access to potable water, and we are over here pooping in it. Okay, so Dancing Rabbit, we don't do that. We save all of those nutrients through composting them, and we save the water too. So the second thing is that instead of lawns around our houses, most of us have gardens. And the few lawns that we do have don't get watered. Now the third one is that we have a culture at Dancing Rabbit that says that you do not need to take a shower every day in order to be socially acceptable. All right, now I just walked right into the dirty hippie stereotype, didn't I? Yeah, okay, so I want you to walk in there with me for a minute, though, because this is one of those places where I think the hippies have it right, okay? So our culture places a higher value on how you look and smell than it does on either your contributions or the health of our local watersheds. And women, in particular, are still expected to spend hours every week primping and preening in front of a mirror, basically repressing our bodies just to be socially acceptable. All right, now I primp and preen. I was just doing it out in the hallway a couple minutes ago, but I do it about twice a year. You know, and it's really fun about twice a year. Hey, but I remember having to do it every day, and it's not fun. Okay? And I was wasting a lot of time, money, electricity, and water. So at Dancing Rabbit, we don't have the daily shower expectation. What we do have in the summer months is this terrific swimming pond, and it's actually fun. Yeah? Okay, so you know I'm going to pick on cars, right? Because everybody does it when we're talking about sustainability. So Americans own a whopping 83 cars for every 100 people. Okay, that looks like this. 4 cars, 5 people. Dancing Rabbit, it looks like this. So we are 75 people who are sharing those 4 cars. And that is 6% of the US average of number of vehicles. And then within that co-op, we only use about 7% of the fuel. Now, folks do sometimes use cars that are outside of the co-op. So the numbers are actually a little bit higher than that, but I'm comfortable saying that we are right around the 10% mark in how we relate to vehicles. Now, I want to talk about 2 more categories, and that's food and buildings. But these are a little bit harder to figure out how to measure, right? So we've made a commitment that we're doing an ecological audit on ourselves over the next few years, and so I'm hopeful that in a couple years, I'll be able to give you really good numbers on this. But for now, what I want to do is give you a sense of the choices that we're making that we know are bringing our ecological footprint down in these areas as well. So first, I want to be super clear that no one is expecting you to live on 10% of the calories, okay? So none of this is about living 10% of a life, okay? It's about having 10% of the impact that's negatively affecting the environment. All right, so what do we do with food? So we recommend local, organic, and low on the food chain. About half of our members are vegetarian, compared to 13% of Americans in general, and those of us who do eat meat tend to be relatively low meat consumers. Okay? All the agriculture that happens at Dancing Rabbit is organic. We grow more of our own food every year, and when we do buy food from outside of the community, we look for organic as much as we can. Now, we know that these are the right strategies to be following, but like I say, we don't have our numbers yet on this area. Now, down the road, 3 miles away, at Sandhill Farm, which is another intentional community, they grow 85% of their own food, plus, I know the kitten's cute, huh? Plus a little extra to sell to their neighbors, and they are doing all of it organically. And so when I look for inspiration in the food department, I'm actually looking just down the road at our neighbors at Sandhill Farm. All right, now buildings are also complicated. So you have to think about the materials, the distance that they travel, the square footage of your home, and the efficiency. I've already talked about the utilities, so let's look at materials for a minute. Now we do use some concrete and styrofoam, and metal roofs are the most efficient if you want to capture water off of your roof. But most of our materials are actually more at the natural building end of the spectrum. And I want to give you a sense of how far the materials for my own home traveled to get to my building site. So those straw bales came about 20 miles from a local farmer, and the posts came from 3 miles away. All of the rest of the wood came from a building that was taken down about 70 miles away, so they are reclaimed. The beautiful bottles that are in my walls came 842 feet. That is the walking distance from the community recycling center out to my house. And the clay that's in the plaster on my walls traveled somewhere between 3 and 20 feet, pretty much straight up. So we dug it out when we went to put the foundation in, and then it ended up on the walls as plaster. Now, we also have buildings that lean more toward the reclaimed end of the spectrum, like this little house that started out its life as a school bus. And we build smaller. We have about 230 square feet of average indoor space compared to 750 square feet, which is the US norm. We're also pushing the envelope on building right now. Our plan is that next year we will be breaking ground on our new community center. And that building is going to combine the best practices of natural building, green design, and Dancing Rabbit's own internal ecological covenants. And when that building's done, we expect to have the most sustainable municipal building in America. All right, so the sustainability thing is cool, maybe it's even possible, but does it actually not suck? All right, that's what you want to know, right? Okay, so the truth is we actually have a lot of fun. So we laugh a lot, share a lot of hugs. We have a weekly potluck with our 2 neighboring intentional communities. We have our own playing field with Frisbee team, our own bar. I'm at Carleton, I have to say Frisbee at some point, right? With our own bar and dance hall, and we've even become a bit of a destination point for contra dance weekends and blues dance weekends, and that has spawned the creation of our own blues band. Okay, and because people actually ask us this, yes, we even have the internet. Like, whoa, okay? So does this look like it sucks? I mean, I actually think that I'm living a really good, high-quality life, and we're doing it without all the huge pressure to make a ton of money so that you can afford a heavily materialistic lifestyle that's actually at the heart of our unsustainable culture. All right, so how do we pull this off? So I want to introduce you to what I call the 4 C's that make sustainable possible. Those are creativity, courage, compassion, and cooperation. So almost by definition, when you have one foot outside of that box, you have to be creative. I mean, as you've heard from a number of speakers today, making it up as we go along, and that's part of what the world needs right now, right? So that's creativity. And I want to tell you a small story about creativity from Dancing Rabbit. And when I first moved there, there was a young man named Ziggy who was building a house with a reciprocal roof. And these things are called reciprocal because each one of those rafters actually rests on top of each other rafter, and they all support each other. Great metaphor for community. Not my point right at the moment, but it's a great metaphor. All right, so Ziggy wanted to put a skylight up at the top of that roof. And in order to do that, you usually need to get some sort of thing manufactured, like it's often a metal ring. But that's not really Dancing Rabbit style, and so Ziggy was thinking, oh, this is a great opportunity for reuse. But it took us a while to figure out what that was going to be. And at one point, sitting around dinner one night, a complete novice who had never built anything in her life says, well, hey, what about a tractor tire? Okay, and there's this moment, those moments where somebody says something and everybody's wheels kind of go, shh, and then it goes, yeah, that is going to work. Okay, so those are the small moments where innovations can happen. Okay. Now, the point of my story is this. You do not need credentials to be creative. Okay, so we get confused about that sometimes, and we think only some people get to be creative, maybe the art majors or a few other lucky people, but that's actually not true. You don't need credentials to be creative. What you do need, though, is courage. Okay? So that foot out here, out of the box, is living in this wonderful and scary place called the unknown, right? And out here in the unknown, there are really not very many well-worn paths for us to be following. And that's actually okay, because those well-worn paths are taking us places that I don't really think we want to go there, okay? So I think our historical moment is calling on us to be courageous, to make it up, to be bold, okay? And it's a good thing that we have compassion in this mix as well, because compassion is kind of like balm on all that boldness energy, right? So what I mean by compassion in this context is this. We need to stay connected with the reality that our choices affect the people in our lives, and they affect people on the other side of the world that you are probably never even going to meet. And so part of it is about not pretending that our choices are ethically neutral, because they're not actually ethically neutral. So compassion means staying connected. All right, now I probably shouldn't even be up here talking about connection. So I'm one of those people who has a really unfortunate out of sight, out of mind thing going with people in my life. So this drives my husband nuts. All right, so he'll be away on a trip somewhere, and I will get wrapped up in whatever it is that I am doing at home, and something starts tickling at the back of my brain, and 24 hours it finally occurs to me that, ooh, I haven't talked to my husband in like 3 days. Oops, okay? So, I get it, how we can get disconnected, even from people and things that we care really deeply about. But the planet can't really afford that kind of disconnection from us right now. We have got to get good at compassion. Now, one of the great things about living in community is living with people you really don't like. Okay? So of all the weird things I've said in this talk, that probably tops them. But the thing is, having compassion with like the faceless millions out there is one thing. But try having compassion with that person who drives you nuts on a daily basis, and you don't get weekends off from this person. Okay, so that is uphill. And the thing that I've learned is that compassion and creativity and courage, these are actually skills. And we need places to practice our skills, okay? And community is great for that because it is kind of in-your-face level real, right? And I've actually started to believe that living in community is a version of world peace activism. And that is because one of the things that we are having to learn is how to resolve conflicts, even deeply embedded conflicts, peaceably. Now, if we can do that, that is going to be huge for sustainability. All right, now the mother of all sustainability skills is cooperation. At Dancing Rabbit, we could not do what we do without a huge commitment to cooperation. So we share not only those cars, which is a really big deal for Americans, sharing cars. Okay, so we share the cars, plus land and tools, and a common house that makes it possible for us to build our homes smaller, still get our needs met, and not have it feel like deprivation. And when you share at that level, you need to get really good at your social skills, and you also need to get very practical about things. People don't necessarily associate that with sustainability activists, but we actually are a very practical bunch. So we use online tools for doing our car sharing. We've actually gotten trained in facilitation so that our meetings don't, suck. And we do work parties, and we share the work. We take turns doing the work that needs to be done in order to have a village work. All right, now I want to highlight one more really big advantage to doing your life from the 4 C's, and that is this. At Dancing Rabbit, we are doing this life on less than $10,000 a year of average annual income. That's about half of our local county's average. So one of the other images that I could have tossed up at the beginning is this idea that sustainability is really expensive. Like, you need to spend a lot of money to be sustainable. But that's not actually the case. The truth is, we don't need more money, and we don't need more stuff to be sustainable. What we do need is each other. Thank you so much.